I believe it is, yeah. Is there Susan not here?
No, she'll be late.
All right, I'll start it off then.
All right.
Unless you want to.
I'd like
Deputy.
to call to order a joint meeting of the Village and Town Board. So I'd like the motion to open the meeting. Second? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Same for the village.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Katie?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just before we start, the only thing that was handed to me, and I also will assume all the firemen are here, so they are probably aware of it also, is tomorrow start some of the prescribed burns up at the Mohonk Preserve. Did you guys know that? I hope. Good, okay. So anyone wanting to go up to Mohonk, Undercliff, Overcliff will be closed all day tomorrow. And if anyone gets any calls or sees smoke up on the mountain along Undercliff, Overcliff, it is where it is supposed to be. If you see smoke in the other areas, please report it, but otherwise it will be a normal occurrence. Tonight's meeting is to discuss the New Paltz Fire Department wanted to discuss a fire district. So I know we have Bill Du Bois here. The president is going to discuss part of it, and they have the attorney Terrence Hannigan, who is also a professional on fire districts in New York State and maybe other states. I know in New York State and other. Okay, New York State.
I'm not a professional on anything, but I'm
Okay, and
practicing fire service law.
so the meeting is now yours, gentlemen. Let us know what you want us to do. And if anyone here would like to turn around and watch this sitting at this table, please feel free.
Before we,
Oh, you have something else?
the village board has one tiny approval of a bill and claim that we can do after the presentation. I just wanted to add that to the agenda.
Absolutely, we'll be done.
Okay, I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank both boards for allowing the fire department to present the possibility of...
Oh, I'm sorry, Bill. One thing, I apologize. Can you use the microphone? I apologize. I did not know he needed it either. He needs it for the camera.
I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank both boards for allowing the New Paltz Fire Department to present the possible ideas of forming a fire district. We have our attorney, Terry Hannigan. He is with Hannigan Law Firm in Albany, New York. Terry is also a volunteer fireman and a New York State fire instructor. He has presented a short presentation, and we will answer questions as we go through. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. The operative word being short presentation. I know, obviously, you folks are very busy, and obviously, a nice turnout here tonight. There's probably, I've been involved with the New Paltz Fire Department for several years now. We actually did a similar presentation in 2010 with respect to the prospect of forming a joint fire district. I'm going to go through some scenarios that I've been asked to address by the fire department. I understand that, obviously, the political cultures change and situations change, and I think when we were here in 2010, or high school in 2010, one issue was the sort of the rapport, if you will, between the village and the town and what's going to happen, and I guess you've made some substantial progress since that time. So hopefully this presentation will be refreshing and timely for you. Preliminarily, you should know the New Paltz Fire Department is a not-for-profit corporation. Because they exist within the parameters of the village of New Paltz, they are deemed to be a village fire department. The village has responsibility for them, and obviously the town has a contract for fire protection with the village, which allows the village fire department to go out and serve the town. So there's a not-for-profit corporation that is under the charge of the village at this point in time, and we're exploring options that might change the way that relationship exists. And I characterize them as challenges because that's the way they were presented to me. How will the fire service be governed in the future? And what's the best organizational structure? There are a couple or three that we'll talk about tonight. Who's going to pay for it? And should it continue to be funded through village government? Well, should it be continued to be funded through village government kind of begs the question. If it's not a village fire department, there will have to be a different structure for providing the revenue stream that currently exists, currently through the village payment and through the town's fire protection payment that goes to the village. And where will new firefighters come from? I threw that one in. When I was here last time, and in my discussions with the village mayor at the time and the town supervisor at the time, I'm the guy from out of town, so you don't have to believe me. You don't believe anything I say. But the numbers that concern me most with respect to your village fire department was the fact that I think I have about 30 Class A interior firefighters. Only 2 of them were from the village at the time, and I understand the numbers are substantially the same now. So you have a situation where the complement of your firefighters, the ones who don the air packs and win, are actually coming from the town. They're paying taxes to the town, but they really don't have any control over the governance. As citizens of the town, they don't really have any control over the governance of the fire department, because the fire department is in fact the village fire department. You have some interesting challenges here and some benefits. You have the benefit of having to be able to draw from the student population from the college. The drawback is you have an inordinate number of calls there. And if anybody harkens back to the public hearing, there was a woman who got up, this is the 2010 public hearing, and suggested that we should stop running the calls to the college. I don't know that it was adequately addressed, but there's a law that requires us to go to all the alarms at the college. There was a tragic fire at Seton Hall several years ago, and New York made it a law that when an alarm comes in, the fire department must respond. You can't send campus security over. You can't wait till it's validated that it's a legitimate fire or not. So the call volume, is obviously driven in large measure by the college during the time college is in session. But again, you take that, but you can draw from that young population firefighters. We can borrow firefighters who reside elsewhere and will work for our fire department while they're here. So that's, like I said, the last point is where do your firefighters come from now? Well, primarily from the town, which is a little unusual for a village fire department. Okay, talk to me. Here we go. Options. You can continue as a village fire department, and these are there might be there might be another option or two, but these are the ones in the forefront. These are the bona fide ones. You continue as a village fire department into the future, and basically nothing changes. The village would have control, responsibility, liability, and the fiscal obligation to provide for the fire department. The option 2, and you need to distinguish between 2 and 3, form a town-wide fire protection district. The operative word there is protection. Fire protection district is basically an adjunct of the town. It's essentially a tax map. That's what you have now in the town of New Paltz. You have a fire protection district. Its obligation is merely to delineate a geographic area, which is the town outside of the village, levy a tax, and the town board is then responsible, I got it backwards, the town board is responsible to find somebody to provide fire protection and then levy the tax on that area within the town to pay for that fire protection. And in some towns you have multiple fire protection districts. Dare I say, in some towns you have multiple fire protection districts and multiple fire districts. A fire district, the third option is something different from a fire protection district. And the word joint there, we're going to consider it in the short term, but in the long term, we're just going to be calling it a fire district, the distinction between a fire protection district and a fire district. A fire district is a municipal entity that is governed by a board of fire commissioners that basically has all responsibility for what goes on within that district. A good analogy would be a school district. You have a school district within a town, within a city, or across several towns. It's governed by the school board, and it's the same system here with a fire district. A fire district can transcend town lines just like a school district can. But the distinction between a fire protection district and a fire district, for the purposes of our discussion here and the shorthand discussion, is that the governance of the fire district is done by commissioners who coincidentally are not compensated for their service. And they are responsible for making certain that the fire protection in the fire district is adequate. And they can do that by shepherding, overseeing the fire company that's in the town already or in the district already, or they can contract with outside departments to do that. But it's their responsibility to make certain that there's no lapse in fire protection. The distinction being, one other distinction, in a fire protection district, the town board has the responsibility to enter into a contract, has a responsibility for everything else in the town as well, and fire protection is one of the many responsibilities they have, but they can only use that fire protection district tax money that they raise for the provision of fire protection. So I apologize for the quizzical nomenclature. I would call fire protection district something else if I could, but I can't. That's what the law calls them. And in terms of a joint fire district, the word joint as we use it tonight is simply because we have a village and a town. The common nomenclature is a fire district, but if you're going from a situation where you have a village and a town that already have fire protection, there are specific provisions in the town law of the state of New York that provide for the establishment of a joint fire district, which then, once it's born, acts like a regular fire district if it was just invented out by a town on its own. So the word joint we're going to talk about now because we've got the village involved, but at some point in time during the discussion, we're just going to talk about how fire districts conduct business and how they behave and how they work. Everybody good so far?
Yes.
Village, fire protection district, fire district. Okay, there's going to be a quiz on this, all right? Okay. Option one, continuing as the village fire department. Under the fire department would be under the control of the village. Village is the authority having jurisdiction. Those are magical words in fire parlance. It means that the village is responsible for making sure that the fire department is compliant in all respects with OSHA rules, is up to speed with the standards, that they have the equipment that they're supposed to have. They are the authority having jurisdiction. Even though the fire company is an independent not-for-profit corporation, the AHJ, in this case the village, is responsible. So they would retain control. The cost for the fire protection would remain subject to the village's 2% tax cap. And we'll talk about that probably throughout the evening. And I believe on your village tax bills, there's no delineation on your village tax. It's just village tax. So the fire protection that the village provides it's in your tax bill, but you can't readily identify. You'd have to do some calculations to figure out what percentage of the fire budget. Or what percentage of the village budget, the fire budget is, and then use that multiplier against your tax bill to figure out how many dollars you're actually spending for your fire service. Village, again, if we don't change, the village remains fiscally responsible and liable for firematic operations. Again, it's the fiscal obligation and the legal obligation. There aren't a lot of lawsuits out there, and I don't mean to, I'm not one of those, you gotta be afraid of getting sued, because I've been involved in gazillions of lawsuits. I'm not one of those people, but the legal liability for fire service operations today is with the village, all right? If it was a fire protection district, it would be with the town. And if it was a fire district, it would be with the Board of Fire Commissioners of that fire district. So that's one area where there's three distinctions. The legal and fiscal responsibility attaches to that particular AHJ, or that entity that's controlling.
Terry?
Yes, sir.
I'm a little bit confused, only because I may be misunderstanding. It's a village fire department now, and having signed a bunch of these fire protection contracts over the years, we contract with the town's fire protection district. So the town has one right now. It's just the town outside the village is what the fire protection district is. So I'm confused. How is forming a fire protection district different than the status quo? My understanding is we have a village department, and so for example, the town doesn't have, they have a fire protection district, which is the town outside the village. They could contract with the Gardner Fire Department if they chose to. They don't have to contract with the village fire department.
They absolutely could.
So in your first slide, you had the three options. You don't have to go back to it, but it's just, is this status quo that we right now have a village fire department and a town fire protection district which chooses to contract with the village? Is that accurate?
That's accurate to a degree. When I talk about a fire protection district as an option,
Yeah.
I'm talking about it with the concept that the village is out of the equation, that the village is not overseeing any control, that it would be the town
So it would
fire
be-
protection district would subsume the village's control.
Okay, and I'm with, you, which would then require the town, including the village, so the entire town,
Yes.
to find some other fire department to provide services.
No. Well, what would happen is you got to...
I guess, and maybe you'll get to it, but just in the back of your mind, I'm confused about the distinction between a fire protection district that is served by a department based in New Paltz and a fire district which is served by a department in New Paltz.
Let me tackle that right now, because I don't want people to go off on them. You have a fire protection district in the town, which is
Yes.
a geographic area. That fire protection district, through the benefits of the town board, contracts with the village of New Paltz, with a three-party contract.
Yeah.
So that the village's fire department goes out and serves the town.
Right.
Okay? When I put it up here as an option, I am operating under the assumption that the village will either relinquish control of the obligation to provide fire protection, or that it will be consolidated, dissolved, whatever, and that the whole, basically what you would do, you would erase that line around the village and make the whole town a fire protection district.
Town supersedes.
Provided by whom?
Town supersedes the village.
With fire protection provided by whom? If there's no
The
longer a
town-
village department.
If it was a fire, no, the department could still exist. The fire department as a not-for-profit entity could exist, and then the town would contract with that department to provide coverage for the entire town, inclusive of the village now. Right now, you don't do it, you don't contract inclusive of the village, because the village has its own entity. So what we're doing is essentially, the village wouldn't have to go away, but the village would have to relinquish its authority over the fire department, and then you could create this town-wide fire protection district. which would
Isn't that the same thing as just a fire district?
No, it's different.
No, because there wouldn't be a fire commission.
Correct.
But
Townwide, not town outside of village only.
But who, so it would be a town fire department then?
Townwide.
well, okay, so I think I can
Yes.
clarify that, and I asked the question at the same time.
Say that.
If we went to that, the fire department would be funded through that contract.
Correct.
But it wouldn't be like it is now with the village, where it's just automatically in the budget, and then we do a contract with the town. It would just be that contract that
It would
would
be,
renew annually.
it would be a contract that could renew annually or up to 5 years, but it would be a contractual relationship, all right? In essence, the fire company would be a vendor to the
I
town.
think that's the issue. It's the fire company, not the fire department.
Right.
So if you distinguish between the fire company and the fire department, I think you have a distinction that has a real difference.
And I usually do, and you know why I didn't this time?
No.
Because when I looked up the corporate name of your fire company,
Yeah.
it's the New Paltz Fire Department.
Incorporated.
No, it's not that. The Secretary of State does not have the ink or co-ed, and I was astounded to see
Okay,
that.
well, that gets back to my first question then, which is one of
But it was 1926 is when it was formed.
structure, is that, maybe I'm just slow, but having a fire district is very straightforward. You have this, like you said, the school district separate, the elected board of commissioners. A village fire department contracting services to the town is straightforward. You've got the village acting effectively as the board of fire commissioners, serving a similar role in the village department. But what I'm missing is, my understanding of fire protection districts are that they are simply, as you said, a line drawn on a map, but they have to contract with somebody.
Yes.
And it seems that unless you're going to contract with a fire company that has no oversight from the public, which is what a district would provide through the Board of Fire Commissioners, I don't see how you can have a fire protection district that provides the services that is in any way different than a fire district. Straightforward. Unless we get rid of the New Paltz Fire Department altogether, and contract with Gardner or some other, Modena or somewhere else. Well, can you describe maybe, what's the difference between a fire protection district townwide and a fire district townwide?
Yeah, I'm getting to that.
All right, then I'm sorry to jump ahead.
But where you're getting confused, and I understand, there's two areas of confusion. One is that the proper name is fire department, that's why I used it. But yeah, I can refer to it as the fire company going.
Company is clear,
Okay,
thank
the
you.
corporation, fire company.
Because departments can have multiple companies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're about, like, there's only 3 people in the state that know that, so I appreciate that.
Well, now there's 4,
Okay.
and now 12.
And all of the companies form the department of
Right.
the AHJ. The other thing that's confusing is you already have a fire protection district in place. So really, when I talk about it here, what I'm talking about doing is the fire protection district surrounds the village. And what I'm talking about here is a fire protection district where the village would step back, step out, just basically say, we're surrendering
But
our
who
responsibility.
steps in? That's the gist of my question.
Then, see, the fire
Town
protection,
board.
the fire protection district would be expanded to fill in that area. Because right now it can't cover it because you're.
Who governs it?
The town
The
would.
town board would govern the fire protection district.
Would govern the town, would govern a fire protection district via contract with the fire company.
Right. So it would shift from the village board to the town board is really all of it.
Yeah, I mean,
Which-
that's,
Not in the sense,
Yeah.
not in the sense that your village fire runs. It would be
Under a fire
completely
district.
different sense. It would be in a vendor sense, not in a department.
Right.
Fire district.
Right.
you're exactly correct.
But without the electoral oversight of a fire commission.
Correct. The
Okay.
town board.
That's
would-
what I'm trying to
the
pull out
relationship.
the threads, yeah.
Yeah, the relationship would be defined by the contract.
Okay.
Right now, village law is weird, okay, when it comes to fire companies. And it's because it's the oldest law with respect to the fire service because of, it comes out of New York, or before New York was the city of New York, it was the village of Queens and the village of Brooklyn. And that's where all of the village law comes from. It hasn't been updated since, hey, I guess let's get these 5 villages together and make them one big city, And that's really that's where village law, it's somewhat behind the times in terms of the town law when it comes to the governance of the fire service. But yeah, what we're talking about here is with a fire protection district is we just, in our minds, eliminate that boundary that the village forms, and now that's just deemed part of the town. Just like it is for police, it's just deemed part of the town. But the police work directly for the town, the fire department in a fire protection district works via
Thank you.
contract.
My question is basically where the buck stops under the fire protection. So
Town.
I've answered, yeah, you've answered that, thank you.
And it goes in the A fund as.
Yeah, right.
So
Of course.
if it's the town, it's the A fund.
Of course,
Okay,
yeah.
it's all.
Let's get past the whole village thing. One of us is acting up, I don't know. So we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. Sit down, Earl. Jumping ahead to our slide, formation of a town-wide fire protection district. Hopefully that clarifies it. A couple things would have to happen. By act of legislature, the village would have to relinquish its obligation to provide fire protection, or through the new consolidation dissolution statute, you could have a plan, a consolidation plan, where you could have the town assume the responsibility. But it really comes in 2 flavors. There's about a dozen villages that have done it through legislative enactment, and basically you get your legislator to pass a bill that says the village is foregoing its statutory obligation to provide fire protection, and it's turning it over to the town. Under the fire protection district model, the town board would have to contract with the fire department in the same fashion the village does presently. And actually, the town presently contracts with it, but it's even though it's a three-step relationship or 3-legged stool relationship, it's really the village of New Paltz is really the vendor to the town of New Paltz in that contract. Town would be legally and financially responsible for the fire service. Again, town would be obligated to make certain that the revenues were there to provide the fire service. They'd have to review the budget. Obviously, have to make sure the contract was adequate, and they would have legal liability as well for. And again, we get around this with insurance and things, but technically speaking, realistically speaking, in a fire protection district, the town is legally liable then for fire protection throughout the entire area. And there would be the fire budget would be included in the town's 2% cap. under the general municipal law. So when the town gets together in the fall and figures out its budget, that whatever the fire budget is, that would be factored into the 2% cap, which last year was 1.66, which I have reliable information. Next year is going to be 1.45. So 2% is a myth too. So. Formation of a joint fire district or a JFD. This is something that was floated in 2010 when we were down here. I was down here, I'm sorry. What it provides for, again, word joint is a temporary word in here. So it provides for a shared responsibility between the village and the town for the formation of a joint fire district. And thereafter, once they do that, once they do the necessary to appoint a board, pass the requisite resolutions, have the necessary public hearings, what have you, then the control of the fire district is turned over to the Board of Fire Commissioners. Board of Fire Commissioners are somewhat synonymous with the village board, or with the town board, or the school board. They are the fiduciaries who are responsible for making certain that fire protection is provided. There's some leeway in the law. Typically, you see 5 commissioners, but the law allows 3 to 7. They can be appointed, in the first instance, they're appointed by the town. When we do these types of things, though, we usually get the town and the village to work out some, hey, here's who these people are going to be. But the law specifically says they shall be appointed by the town. Again, I've never seen that happen where you have just the town doing it. Because the formation is joint, there's always some dialogue give and take. And the law provides that the commissioners can be elected thereafter. And I say that's a good idea because it keeps it kind of removes the Board of Fire Commissioners from being politicized by one entity or the other. If you're going to go forward with appointed commissioners, then there's always going to be a political component. I hate to say that to you folks, but maybe I'm preaching to the choir here. But if you have elected commissioners, their election would be on the second Tuesday in December. Most fire district elections are, and any resident of the district could run for the elected fire district commissioner. Sir.
Yeah, and just a question about those fire district elections. Those are run by the fire company opposed to the Board of Elections, correct?
Yeah, you're wrong on both counts. They're run by the fire district.
Run by the fire district.
There's Cooper. I don't know what happened to Cooper. God bless them. No, they're run by the fire district. The sitting board can't participate in the elections, but the process, quite simply, is the elections are going to be, the vote's going to be the second Tuesday in December. In or about November or October, they'll appoint a fire district board of elections who will take the oaths and all that. To be honest, they'll get the books from the county. They'll go through the books to make certain that only people in the fire district vote, because sometimes election districts. Okay, and then they have a vote. Some districts use, most of them use paper ballots. Some use the optical scanning machines. Others still use the mechanical machines. But the vote is run by the Board of Elections, small b, Board of Elections, small e. That has to certify the election to the town.
But the Board of Elections are appointed members from within the fire companies?
No. The Board of Elections have to be resident electors of the fire district. So they have to be eligible to vote, and they have to live in the fire district.
Okay, so then what I was just clarifying here is, with the exception of village elections in Ulster County, or any county for that matter, are run by the County Board of Elections. In this case, though, with fire districts, with the exception of giving the books, it is not overseen by the County Board of Elections.
Correct. Just like school districts.
Yeah, school elections. Yeah.
Okay. I would love the county to do that.
As you're beginning, though, who appoints the initial Board of Fire Election Inspectors?
The Board of Commissioners or the election inspectors?
The election inspectors, for the first time around, are they appointed? Do you first appoint the commissioners?
Yes.
Okay, so the commissioners are appointed
First.
Can that be by intermunicipal agreement so that the village and town get an equal number of appointments?
It can be, and the laws, and again, this is where the law doesn't make sense in a lot of places. This is one where you have this joint thing, and you're walking down the aisle together, hand in hand, and then the law says the town shall appoint the initial commissioners. Where we've done this in the past, we usually go, you get two, and we'll agree on the fifth.
Okay.
That's done kind of outside, but technically speaking, the town is the designating authority for that.
Okay, so the steps are, we agree to do this. The two boards appoint 3 to 7 commissioners. The commissioners then appoint the election inspectors and the election itself.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Okay. And the elections, I mean, the rules for the election, the ballots are publicly canvassed, it's all done out.
Set procedure.
Yeah, it's all done out in the public. And then, okay, so moving right along, thereafter, it's on the Board of Fire Commissioners. Okay, look at the election thing. See if I can not get Cooper on here again. Okay. This is kind of where I wanted to go with respect to the discussion about the joint fire district. Why it's done, how it's done, what are the benefits, impact on community, impact on the fire department. Why it's done provides an organizational structure. Right now, you have an organizational structure that is the village fire department overseeing the fire company. Under a fire district, it would be a similar relationship. There would not be a contract. Fire districts do not execute contracts with the fire departments or with the fire companies. It's more of a hand-in-glove parent-child, I usually say parent-adolescent relationship because of all the work I do with them. But it's a symbiotic relationship. The fire company's job in a fire district is to do 2 things. Actually, 3 things. It's to recruit members, recruit firefighters. It's to nominate the chief officers, so for approval or disapproval by the Board of Fire Commissioners. And it's to provide the labor pool, the labor force, when the alarm goes, because at the time the alarm sounds or whenever the fire company is doing the fire district's business, they are employees of the fire district. In a fire protection district, they're deemed to be employees of the town. In the current situation you have, they're employees of the village when the alarm sounds. So in the fire district scenario, though, the fire company would deal with their issues. They would have, if they wanted to have pancake breakfast to fund the company functions, that's great. They wouldn't have to have a pancake breakfast to fund a fire truck unless they wanted to. That's the obligation of the Board of Fire Commissioners to make certain that there is the adequate and necessary, as they deem fit. The advantage is the Board of Fire Commissioners, and again, they can come from anywhere in the community. The advantage is that that's the only thing on their plate is the fire protection issue. It takes it off of. There's not necessarily competing interests, but they have to act in the same fiduciary capacity that any elected official, or in this case, an elected townwide official, would have to act. There's continuity in governance. The commissioners, after getting appointed in the first instance, say we did this in August. That's going to come back for a very relevant reason in a minute. Pick them in August. There'd be an election in December, okay, for fire commissioners. And on the first go-around, all the fire commissioners would be up for vote. And anybody else that wanted to run, could throw their hat in the ring. And the top 5 vote getters get to be the commissioners going forward. And then whoever gets the most votes gets it for 5 years, second most votes gets it for 4 years, and so on.
Staggered.
Yeah, so it's staggered. After that happens, though, now in year 2, the commissioner that had the 1-year gig is up again. If he or she chooses to run. And then when they run, that time they're in for a 5-year gig. So, what it provides for is you don't have wholesale changes in the board. You've got, assuming nobody leaves or moves away, you've got continuity over, a 5-year plan. And that's, there's great advantages to that, most importantly in the context of institutional, knowledge. All right, the things get handed down, and you get people going through budget processes numerous times. Another thing I didn't, actually, maybe I pointed out later.
Can you determine you don't want to necessarily have an election every year. So could you designate that 2 commissioners serve 5-year terms and then the next year? Or is it 1 commissioner per year if you've got 5?
That's the way it
Every
works.
year.
That's the way it works. That's the way it works.
Okay.
Where was I going with? Okay, it doesn't matter. Provide for long-range planning. Again, one of the nice things about fire commissioners is the thing that's the only thing on their plate, they can project, okay, we've got a piece of apparatus we bought in 2010. That's going to have to be replaced ideally in 2030. But we know that there's going to be, we're going to need new tires in 2017 and probably again in 2000. I mean, that's stuff fire commissioners know, okay? Or they have to know. They have to learn. So that you avoid surprises, and it provides for, long-term apparatus replacement. You don't want the fire company to come and say, hey, we need a new aerial truck. We need a new engine, next year. This way, sorry.
No worries. All these sound great, and I'm confused because, or maybe they're just, because it's a slide, it's overly broad. All 4 of these seem to be status quo no matter which option we choose. Whether it's a village department, a town protection district, or fire district, all 3 provide an organizational structure, establish continuing governance, should provide for long-range planning, and are governed by an established body of case law. Am I wrong in that? Especially when we're looking at a board of elected commissioners. When we're looking at a board of elected commissioners, that would be exactly as much continuity and long-range planning as it would if the village board or town board were in charge, both elected bodies.
Well, I'm sorry, you have
I'm going to disagree because
You disagree that these are provided
They have one
on?
thing that they're supposed to be overseeing all aspects, all planning, all thinking on equipment for one thing only.
Oh,
and
I
that is fire
understand that.
protection.
I understand.
The village board, in our case,
It's one of many things we do.
one of many things, and I, for one, am not capable of being a fire commissioner as I just described it, because I don't have that kind of knowledge.
I disagree. You are capable of being a fire commissioner, because fire commissioners have to go to training.
I'm talking about me as a trustee right now.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe we should send you to the fire department meetings with Rebecca for a while, get you up
Well,
to speed.
maybe, but
We can make a fire commissioner out of you. Years ago, we had fire commissioner training. The association of fire commissioners had training right here.
How does a district do these 4 things better than a village board or a town board would?
Because when the fire company has an issue or there's a concern, they go to the Board of Fire Commissioners and say, hey, we have this issue with respect to a code issue, an access issue, a safety issue. It's the Board of Fire Commissioners' responsibility, as opposed to going to the village board that has 37 other things on their plate at the time. With respect to the
So
continuity
it's an issue of focus, really.
Yeah, with respect to continuity of focus, that's a fine word too. It's more of a symbiotic relationship than the situation with the village now, just because of the focus or the obligation, if you will, the fiduciary obligation for the fire protection. The continuity, again, it's a 5-year term as opposed to
A 4-year term.
Well, you've seen, yeah, but in your situation here, you've seen, since 2010, the political sands have shifted how many times?
And they don't generally with fire commissioners?
Now the Board of Fire Commissioners...
You tend to have the same people reelected over and over again?
Not necessarily. No, there's transition.
I guess wouldn't those elections be just as volatile as other community elections?
In some places, they're very good. In some places, they have lawn signs for commissioner. Okay,
Yeah.
we've seen that. They tend to be... they tend to be more than one-horse races, if that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
But there's like I
The
said,
turnover is really the question.
the turnover and the fact that you're only going to lose one person every year as opposed
I
to
see.
2 or 3, depending on what happens. And then, again, the long-range planning, their long-range planning is focused entirely on the fire service, not on, if somebody comes to you as a town board member, village board member, and I'm not saying this would happen, but, hey, we have to replace all our Scott air packs in the next 3 years. You don't know that because you're not the commissioner in charge of equipment or apparatus. or if they say, we've got problems with the facility, it's not OSHA compliant, we need this, you're not the commissioner for buildings and grounds, so that's not really, and that's how most boards of fire commissioners divvy up the responsibilities. And with respect to the long-range planning, they'll come up with a 10, 20, and 30-year plan. Typically speaking, a piece of apparatus is supposed to last you between 20, it can last you between 20, we're trying to stretch them out now, 25 years. But the period of probable usefulness under the state law is 20 years for a typical piece. And then, established body of statutory and case law. Section 170, or actually Article 11 of the town law, and primarily Section 176, lays out all the obligations of the Board of Fire Commissioners. It lays out the process for having elections. It sets forth the process for if you have to replace a commissioner. And it sets forth, the district's responsibility for providing discipline and relates to some other areas. There's town law with respect to fire districts is much more settled and actually much more cogent, if you will, than village law. Even though village law is long-standing, it's more inclusive and it deals with more issues. And it also sets forth the cookbook as to how to run a fire department within a fire district. Unlike the village law, which is somewhat, it says you can have a fire council, or the trustees can do it, or the trustees can appoint commissioners. But if they don't appoint commissioners, it's all over the place. So. Okay. I'm giving up on that. Redo. I get zapped every time I do it, too. Why it's done, provide, the Board of Fire Commissioners' responsibility is responsible for developing a budget. It wouldn't be the fire company coming into the village now and trying to hash out a budget. That would be the responsibility of the Board of Fire Commissioners, not the fire company. They would do that in conjunction with their chief officers. And with respect to the tax levy, there's a formula by which taxes are computed. It's a formula that the state controller puts out. And there's not only a 2% tax cap, there's also a ceiling for the maximum amount that can be levied. Rarely, you don't see anybody these days going over their maximum levy. It is subject to the 2% tax cap. I know there's some discussion about that. In the General Municipal Law 3C, which is the 2% tax cap statute, paragraph 2, sub B, I believe, when it identifies local communities that are obligated, or to taxing districts that are obligated to follow the 2% tax cap, specifically identifies fire districts. Fire districts have been doing it. Actually, they were the first ones to have to do it when the tax cap was enacted. We have to have our budgets done by the end of September. And the controller's office rolled out. The first year we did it, which I think was 2011, we didn't even have our growth factor from the tax and finance. They were going to provide it to us the Thursday after the Tuesday the budget was due. So we were the first ones to be subjected to it. Another thing is that every fire district budget has to be reported to the New York State Controller on a specific form. It has to be filed every year by March the 30th. There has to be an independent annual audit of the fire district if its revenue exceeds $300,000. It used to be $200,000. It was just raised to $300,000 this year. That means the fire district has to hire a certified public accountant to audit the books.
Do they contract with the county to do their tax collecting?
Yes. In fact, what happens is the tax levy set. There's a budget that's prepared on the requisite form. It's given to the town. The town supervisor or the town controller or whoever does the town budget takes it, staples it to the town budget, and sends it to the county.
And Terry, the equipment purchases or any bonding is subject to public referendum like a school district, correct?
Yes. Well, yeah. Purchases aren't, if they have the cash reserves.
No, because I know that that's one of the, could be a pro or con. I know that the Highland District, I believe, needed a new truck of some kind, and the voters voted it down. Whereas the village department, you're not subject to that. We just put it into our next borrow. And so that is that, I guess it depends on your point of view, whether it's good or bad, the community having a say over whether we buy the next truck or not. It could be a risk or it could be a benefit, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, if you need a truck, you need a truck. I mean, and it's up to the commissioners if it gets voted down. Okay, well, maybe you've got to, rebuild the pump on this one for $20,000, even though in your own mind you think you're throwing good money after bad, but you need that equipment. Or maybe we instead of rehabbing a truck, maybe we buy a used truck. But it becomes the fire commissioner's problem to solve that. With respect to fire districts, and I think a big piece of this will come up in another slide, in the next slide, you can put money away. You can save money in a capital reserve account. And that's a big, contentious issue now with some local governments. But part of a prudent fire district budget would contain a capital reserve allotment for, X amount of the dollars would go into a capital reserve apparatus, X for equipment, and X for capital improvements. And then there's also an emergency repair. But it's the only place districts are allowed to save money. Unlike other local governments, we're not allowed to have a carryover. The notion is you're going to tax, if you tax $100, when you get to December 31st, you better be spending your last dollar. And if you would put $10 in savings for the apparatus and $10, that's fine, but you're supposed to zero out. The law does allow, the controller's office does allow a carryover, typically in the area 8%. But the fiction of the law is they think that you start anew January 1st, when in fact you don't get your tax money until February because the taxes aren't collected. So there necessarily has to be a carryover to get the fire district through.
Now, I think it's one thing is the budgeting. I'm sorry. No, the budgeting tax. It's you have to help me here. I've since forgotten. I think it's 2% of total assessed value. We're a bit. Let's just say we're a little over $1 billion. We're 1.4 billion. So
okay, it's 1,000 for every million.
1,000 for every million. Okay.
It's 0.001 mil, whatever a mil is.
Okay, so
it's 1,000 for every million plus 1,000. That's the lawyerly interpretation.
No,
I can't do math.
I can do it. Right. The other issue they're having is the New York State Comptroller's Office, and the last report they had, there's about 850 fire districts in New York State. About 675 of them have failed to file any type of reports with the New York State Comptroller's Office.
At some point in time?
No, in the last 2 years.
Well, I mean,
and so there's been nothing, and so they don't even know they're exceeding the 2% cap. If you go right onto the New York State Comptroller's website, it's right on there, and then there's a whole huge spreadsheet of all the fire. I mean, I'll just take Ulster. Then I looked at Ulster County. I'm not sure how many Ulster are in Ulster County. It's a little difficult to. It didn't give the total list of Ulster County ones. But I believe there were 14 or 16 listed in Ulster County that have failed to file the last 2 years of anything. So we don't even know if they're exceeding 2%.
I don't know. I mean, the state audits come out and whatever. I think that if you're telling me 650 out of 850 haven't done it, I think the number's incorrect. Maybe over a period of years. But
I'll give it to you right now.
Well, that's fine. That's just saying what it is. Yeah. They're not my districts. They're obligated to file this AUD, annual update report, or the AFRA, I believe it's called, by March 3rd, by February 28th every year. Some places do, some places don't. They're supposed to be doing it.
And for a fire district to exceed a tax cap, like if we were as a town board to exceed a tax cap, we just need 3 out of 5 members. How does it work for a fire district?
It'd be the same process of resolution of the board, majority of the board.
By the commissioners.
The board of fire commissioners, yeah.
Yeah, but a fire district is similar again to a school district. The school district can carry capital reserve funds. They can create capital reserve funds. They can create all sorts of reserve funds, which neither a town nor a village can do in that sense. But they also have the ability to bond, right?
Correct.
Right. That answers the equipment question.
The annual budget subject to public hearing, the third, if you mark your calendars, if you have a fire district, the third Tuesday in October is the annual budget hearing. So come out and you can ask questions about the budget. It will be available, the budget's available before, obviously before the public hearing. When the budget's submitted in September, I'm sorry, and at the end of August, end of September, I apologize. It will, it's filed with the town clerk and it's available, and the good districts that have websites put them online. There's some districts you can go look at their budgets for the last 7 or 8 years.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Do you have the same problem that school districts have, though, in that if there's a new property investment, it doesn't get baked into the tax-based growth factor?
No, the growth factor was supposed to address the fact that,
No, but if it's an investment that receives a pilot,
so fire districts are not subject to pilots. They're not dragged in, they're not participating in pilots. So if the property's not on the tax roll.
your tax levy limit is of a certain size based on your tax-based growth factor. So if your tax-based growth factor doesn't recognize that your community has become larger.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't know that I can answer your question. I'll try and find out an answer for you. What happens is when you compile the budget, it's based on not the present year's assessment roll, but the prior years. So if there's a property that's not on there and it is not calculated into the growth factor, yeah. But the purpose of factoring in the growth factor was to address development that didn't appear on the rolls.
But for projects that receive pilots, though, how does that get reflected in? Because that's what was not addressed with the capital legislation in 2011.
Most of the stuff the fire district wasn't addressed. Capital projects weren't addressed. I don't
So
know.
you're going to run into the same problem that the school district has with a project that could potentially get a
If
pilot.
it's not in the tax rolls, then it's not going to be included. But again, the explanation that the controller's office gave was that growth factor was supposed to address all the things that weren't on the present year's tax roll. Now, if it's not on there because of a pilot, then it needs to be. And there's all sorts of schemes that go on with respect to we've got one, encountered one where, multi-million-dollar properties assessed at a hideously low number, 300, for a period of years. That was the deal that the state and the town cut. So, it's a large apartment complex, and it's paying roughly the same amount of fire tax that a private household would. I mean, I don't pretend to know how they come up with all these financing schemes, quite frankly. I know that with respect to the fire district, you take the assessed valuation from the year prior, and then you can calculate what your spending limit is, and then from that, with respect to the 2% cap, you have to use the growth factor, and it's based upon dollars. The 2% is based upon dollars. That's the only other thing I can add to you. It's not the percentage. Sorry.
So does that mean there's non-taxed entities in this community at this time that can be taxed with a special tax?
Does that mean? If they're tax exempt, they're going to be tax exempt. The question is, are they considered in the rolls? I mean, the tax rolls for the town, for the fire district?
I think Tim just walked you out, actually. But to address that question, I was actually coincidentally reading about this the other day. I do think that the fire district is just like the school district in that standpoint. And there is also a bill currently in the state legislature that I think is in the Senate and the Assembly at this point that would change that as well, because that has been addressed as an obvious issue for schools and fire districts too. So currently as it stands, that scenario, as I understand it, is how it works, but I'm not sure that will be that way for much longer.
The notion was to pull everything that could be taxed onto the tax rolls, but the 2% tax cap legislation kind of bundled up many things with respect to this.
Is there a mechanism to overrule the 2%? Like a school board can, or a voter, the town board could, or the school district can vote?
Yeah, that question was brought up earlier. It's the same process. The governing body, by a majority vote, can vote to exceed the tax cap limitation. That has to be done before the final budget's approved, and quite frankly, it really has to be done. It's going to be done before, as a practical sense, before the budget hearing. It really needs to be in the proposed budget if you're going to exceed it. Where are we here? Okay. The process, you have to have a joint meeting of both boards, the village and the town, resolutions by both boards to conduct a public hearing, and then the operative language is in our third bullet that after a public hearing, if it's determined to be in the public interest to form this joint fire district, then both boards would have to each pass resolutions to allow it. And that would be it in most instances. However, because The village is a sponsor of a LoSAP, which is a Length of Service Award program. This type of formation would require a mandatory referendum, a vote by all of the taxpayers in the town, because the LoSAP is something that the village agreed to, the town hasn't agreed to it yet, and by going to mandatory referendum, which is a vote of all the eligible taxpayers, then they would have a say yes or no. The only thing that's driving that, though, is the existence of the LoSAP program, which again, is a little weird. I mean, it ought to be, you can make a pretty good argument, it ought to be subject to referendum regardless, but because there is a LoSAP program in place, that would necessarily have to be a mandatory vote unless something happened to that LoSAP program before joining.
So would that be added at the time that the election for the commissioners takes place?
No, that would happen. That would happen after a resolution. It would happen right in that order. We haven't even gotten to the point where we've appointed commissioners yet.
Okay.
So there would have to be a vote on that with respect to the LoSAP. Like I said, unless the village closed out the LoSAP program, which would require a mandatory referendum in the village. But that's because of the existence of this LoSAP program, it's going to require a vote.
Okay, so similar question. So if the GFD is, once that resolution is passed by the joint boards, then there is the LoSAP referendum. Is there anything else that gets voted on at that time?
The other piece of the referendum would, well, the resolution would be more detailed than just having the vote. In my world, and I would recommend that you would, in your resolution, put that the commissioners will be elected in ensuing years. If you don't do that on the front end, it doesn't happen. So that would be another piece of the resolution. The vote would merely be, do you approve the formation of the fire district or not? There would have to be language in there with respect to the LoSAP, because that's really the driving force. But it would be an up or down with respect to the formation of the district.
Okay. I'll back it up a step.
Yep.
So if the boards adopt the resolution following the public hearing, does that then go to vote, or is it just the decision of the joint boards to establish the JFD?
It's just the decision of the boards. They determine.
Go to resolution.
No, it goes to the boards by resolution decide, yes, this is in the public interest, this is what we want to do. We want to do it, but it's going to be subject to vote.
It is subject.
Yeah, because of the LoSAP.
Right, okay.
Like I said, if this LoSAP didn't exist, the boards could just do it on their own volition. It's kind of an anomaly in the law.
So essentially, the public is voting on the LoSAP, which could kill the joint, the JFD.
Yeah, let me state it differently. The public wouldn't get a chance to vote on this, but for the fact that there's a LoSAP. So they're not voting the LoSAP up or down necessarily. They're voting taking on this obligation, which has with it a LoSAP component.
Right. Oh, so it's not the LoSAP itself, it's because you have a LoSAP. Gotcha.
That's it.
That the public can actually vote against the JFD.
If there's a rationale, the only one I could postulate would be that the village at one point voted to have this LoSAP. The town has never voted on it. The town's had a contract and has been funding it, but the town residents have never had the opportunity to vote whether they wanted to have it or not. And that's why this anomaly exists in the law. So because there's a LoSAP, it requires a vote. No LoSAP, no vote.
Well,
Yeah, weird stuff.
interesting.
Benefits, and again, benefits maybe is the wrong word there. This is, I don't want to speak too broadly here, but you've got a governance by Board of Fire Commissioners whose responsibility is to learn their job and understand how fire districts work and how, what they need, and, the difference between needs and wants and what they can do. One thing I neglected to mention, board commissioners have to reside in the fire district, okay? At the time they're appointed, elected, or whatever, they always have to reside. They have to be taxpayers. They have to be committing money out of their own pockets if they're going to have it with the tax levy. Town board with the village appoints initial board. Again, we talked about that. Commissioners are elected district-wide thereafter. They hold 5-year terms after the process gets underway. They're not compensated for their service. one little sidelight is that commissioners have to undergo, they're actually one of the few, that they have to undergo mandatory training when they get appointed or elected, every time they get appointed or elected. So the person that gets, the 5 people that get elected are going to have to go to mandatory training. The first person, after 5 get elected, they're all going to have to go to mandatory training. And then after the first year, whoever gets elected, if it's somebody new or the same person, they're going to go to training. So there's a possibility here that somebody could have to go to training 3 years in a row, which is not a bad thing, okay? The training put on primarily by the Association of Fire Districts. We actually did training right here in 2012 for district commissioners in Ulster County. It's a 6-hour program, and there's a whole bunch of stuff they take away with. The Board of Fire Commissioners becomes the HJ. Again, I mentioned that before. The board would be responsible for all fiscal and liability matters, the issues that are now on both the village and the town. The board is trained in fire service administration. That's the training I talked about. There's also a state association. There's online access. There's an attorney who actually I share office space with, whose obligation is to answer the questions with the fire commissioners call, who are members of the association. And the other thing that exists here, this is like trying to describe pornography. You know it when you see it. But there's clear areas of responsibility and lines of delineation between the district and the company. All right, meaning that right now the fire company has to prepare a budget, has to do a lot of administrative stuff in conjunction with the chief, and then go to the village board, and they have to, do their thing. What would happen in this instance is the fire company would be subservient to the fire district, but all the administrative things would be handled by the Board of Fire Commissioners. And they have to act as a board by majority vote. They can't act individually. It leaves the firemen or the fire personnel to, take care of their training, run the calls, and do and handle the social ends. There's the fire company would still have a social function if they, fundraisers or whatever they want to do. That money would stay with the company, but the fire district would be responsible for, turnout codes, bottled water, all that stuff that has to go along with the provision of fire service.
Okay, you just mentioned, and I'd like to expand on. Right now, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, we have in the fire department, which are the men who go out and respond.
And women.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
We're talking about
Okay.
not fire department,
Okay.
okay, the way reality is. Okay.
Firefighters.
Not, with the firefighters. We also have the fire company, which Bill's president of. Does the fire company remain as a separate entity within a fire district?
Yes.
Okay. And what happens is there an arbitration if there is conflict between the firefighters and the Board of Commissioners? Where is...
Fair question. There's less conflict because the firefighters aren't doing the administrative stuff. They're not negotiating a contract. They're not preparing a budget. The fire company has probably job one for the fire company is to take their bylaws and go through and throw out about half the pages, because a lot of the stuff the fire company is doing now is relating to management issues and chain of command type things. The fire company would essentially be relegated to the social function. That's what they should concern themselves with. What are we going to have a car show, or are we going to have a fun drive, or are we going to do this? And they would have to do those 3 things, those 3 duties: recruit people, nominate chief officers, and become the labor force for the fire district when the alarm goes. So what you see is, from a practical standpoint, is you see now as the president of the company, I've got about 4 days of my life back, maybe per month, sometimes per year, that I didn't have before, because I don't have to go through and do the administrative things. That's for the Board of Fire Commissioners to do. I can just concentrate on the best run fire districts in the world. And this is it. The state. When the Board of Fire Commissioners has their meeting, they typically have 1 a month. Some places have 2. at the board sits there, and at this end of the table is the chief, and at this end of the table is the president of the company. And they participate, they report to the district, issues come up, they resolve them there. There are some things that the fire district can't do without the authority of the company. In order to become a firefighter, you have to be a member of the company, so you have to be accepted into that company first, and then the company brings the nomination over, and the board... Yeah, but the Board of Fire Commissioners has final say. They don't have to accept everybody, they don't have to accept the company's nomination for chief. They have essentially, I call it mom and dad status, you know, and as long as, you know, as long as the kids are doing the right thing, and I don't mean to belittle, I'm a fireman myself, but, you know, things tend to run pretty well. I've only experienced one that was completely dysfunctional, but those were the personalities. But the reality of it is that in a fire district, fire department situation, you don't have a contract, you don't have negotiations, you have the board taking care of the needs, and the fire company then free to do what they want. And they don't get to do everything. I mean, hey, we want to go to Arizona for training. No, you're not going. Okay, you go to Monterey Falls, you've been on Connecticut last week for training, but you can't. The board gets to dictate. And there are also limitations on training. The board has to approve all out-of-county training. Things like, rules like that right now the village is responsible for, but probably isn't even aware of.
Now, taking the fire company, the commissioners, everything you've said, the budget, okay. The fire company has its own funds, either through fundraising, however.
Yep.
And they've got their reserve funds, you know, how much we don't know, you know, but just say they do.
Mm-hmm.
Can they, say a new piece of equipment is needed, and the commissioners agree to bond it, but only the, if you will, the basics, and the fire company thinks that there should be extra equipment on it. Can they use their money?
Yes, because it's in their corporate purpose to do that.
Okay.
That was a typical 501c3 can't, but unless it's in their corporate purpose. But you can't. In this instance, they can't.
You can have an inter-fund transfer in that way.
What they would do is probably, and I've seen this, I've seen it done a couple ways. One, a very obvious one, a memorial, you know, you buy a fire truck, it doesn't come with a bell. But you have a line of duty death, the tradition is you get a bell and strap. The fire company pays for that, and it gets mounted on the truck at the time of the...
Okay.
Now, more pragmatic things, if there was a particular piece of equipment, the fire company would probably buy that device, that equipment. If there was a particular way they wanted a truck outfitted, you know, you could do that. I haven't seen that happen. Usually there's a, when you're contemplate getting a piece of apparatus, there's a truck committee that's formed with board and district members, chief officers, and usually some of your best mechanical people in the fire company, and you spec a truck. So there's generally consensus.
Joint effort.
Yeah. So, but yeah, there's stuff that like I said, a bell is the type of thing that typically a fire company would buy. You know, an inscription on something. You know, that would be a fire company thing.
Now, can the fire company within a fire district offer incentives and rewards to volunteers?
You're getting in a real swampy area. There's a LoSAP program which is administered. Okay, so we got that. You know, could they offer, you know, performance?
Do they have to take the LoSAP over if we put it up for referendum and the community says yes, you know, we're going to the fire district? Who has the responsibility for the LoSAP program as it is now?
Village is the sponsor.
No, I know, but we're now in a fire district.
It will be transferred to the Board of Fire Commissioners.
Okay, that goes to the fire commissioner. If the fire company wanted to do something above and beyond that, could they, or would it have to always be through the fire commissioner?
Are you the lady planted in the audience with the question? No. This comes up a lot. No, they're volunteers, essentially. I mean,
Okay.
we do that at the annual banquet. We give out awards. Some people get ribbons, some people get plaques. And that's typically how it's done. We don't, here, you know, if you run this many calls, there's going to be a direct deposit in your bank. That doesn't happen. Okay. It's been tried. You're not allowed to do it. But no, typically...
I'm trying to think of all the questions we're gonna be asked.
Typically, what happens is that they're at a banquet or at a, you know, the top performers to be recognized, and there is typically a $75 limitation on it, but not, it's not like Little League now. Not everybody gets a trophy, okay?
It's the same,
Yeah.
that we're all voted that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's a great, it's funny, because that, no, what if we bought them gas cards? No, we can't do that. Can't do that. I mean, it's just funny, because that's such a precise question with respect to that. But no, the way and the way I explain it when I'm going to a company that's like becoming part of a district, or I had a situation in North Greenbush, New York, where there was a fire district and a fire protection district, and the town wanted to get out of the fire business, so they did away with the fire protection district, made the whole town a fire district, and now there's two companies in there. One that had always been under a fire district board of commissioners, and one that had always contracted with the town. And now they both serve under the same. So you got what I like to kid, one natural born and one adopted child for this
So
fire
there's one
district.
board of commissioners, but two companies?
Two companies. The Board of Fire Commissioners serves the geographic area. And they've done famously well. I mean, they work interoperably. They don't even tell them apart. One has green trucks and one has red trucks. But for years, you know, they were, you know, and the people that the fire company that came into the fire district had to learn a different way of operation, because they had to go ask the Board of Fire Commissioners to do all the stuff they want to do, when historically they had a contract with the town. The town never knew what the heck they were doing. Okay, so now you have to go ask mom and dad, you know, we want to do this, we want to do that. You know, they don't go out and buy, but they also aren't flipping pancakes and chickens every weekend either to raise money to buy fire engines.
But the reverse is that it should be less complicated because there's one company.
Yes.
We do this.
I don't have a factual basis for telling you this, but I'm going to say it anyway. In my experience, typically in a district, in the district there's only one company. That's just because of the way these have evolved. Historically, districts developed on old school district lines. I'm talking way back, 20s, 30s, or old election district lines. That's why you go to some towns, the fire districts don't make any sense. But if you look back far enough, you'll see that they followed line back when the communities were, you know, more dispersed. The trend now, in my experience, is the development of fire districts on a more regional basis or town-wide basis, or multi, you know, part of, you know, entirely one town and part of one town. But the governance is controlled by one board of fire commissioners. No, you could have 37 companies, one board of fire commissioners.
Is the state looking to consolidate those also?
The state's looking to consolidate everything it can, rightly or wrongly. I mean, what we're seeing is, because of the 2% cap, villages and towns, and I'm talking about myself and about 4 other attorneys that do this stuff with some regularity. Villages and towns are scrambling to get out of the fire business because of the fact that they're under the cap, and that by establishing the district, you've now taken that issue off your plate, and you've taken that component of your budget and put it with another entity who's responsible to comply with a 2% cap.
Pass the buck with fire protection, huh?
Well, you could call it that. I call it more getting out of the business you don't understand, you don't know what you're doing. You know.
But that brings up a point that when the efficiency committee reviewed for the joint boards and recommended this meeting, the question came up about potential consolidation of the town and the village, and the state incentive. In our case, it would be $1 million. If the town and village of New Paltz decided to form a fire district, would that affect the $1 million incentive? Should we then later consolidate into one government? And the answer is no, it will not affect.
Yeah, I mean,
The incentive has nothing to do with forming a fire district. And that is from the New York State Comptroller.
well, this is occurring in places where the villages aren't disappearing, or being dissolved, or consolidated, or whatever you want to call it.
One of the big questions that people have asked, so.
Pardon me, ladies, I hate to keep doing this. again, kind of redundant, comprehensive plans for the future, talk about planning. Board has the ability to establish bonds or issue bonds of capital projects. Yeah, they would do it on their own basic, their own financial wherewithal. So if there was to be a capital project to be funded, it would be on the fire district's responsibility. It'd be the fire district's responsibility to issue bonds, bond anticipation notes, other financing methods, not on the town, not on the village. It would be the district. The district would issue them. And that's really what makes it the fire district. That's what distinguishes it, the power to the power to bond and the power to levy taxes. That's what makes them a municipal entity, if you will. Town residents will have representation in the fire service matters. That was the one thing that came up last time around, that the town, even though the town contracted with the village, the residents in the town, the firefighters who were residents of the town, really had no input into how the tax money was being spent, or if it was getting passed on to the village. Again, it was a strange situation long ago in a galaxy far, far away, but that's all changed now. It's good. Tax bills delineate the amount of property owners paying, and that's a big thing. I mean, you take the mystery out of how much are we paying for fire service when it's right there. That'll be a benefit to the village. And I apologize if I'm redundant here. I'm sorry. Impact on the community, that's, ideally there will be minimal impact in terms of the provision of fire service. Hopefully, we'll continue to get better and onward and upward. They'll change the way that it's paid for, they'll change the way the accountability for it, they'll change who you complain to if you don't like the fire service. It'll give you the opportunity to, participate either in the budget process. If you really want to become involved, throw your hat in the ring to become a fire commissioner. You do not have to be a firefighter. In fact, if some of the worst commissioners I know were former firefighters. No, because when I was chief, no, you're not chief, you're a commissioner. No. And actually, most of the healthiest boards have non-firefighters on there. I mean, it's a great way for somebody who wants to be involved in the community to get involved, is to run for the board. And the impact on the fire department, I'll leave that to the firefighters here. I mean, I've had the pleasure of working with these ladies and gentlemen. I actually I participated in a 2-week firefighter training in 2010 with one of your former female firefighters, little Victoria. She was on my 3-person team, so she's moved on, but I've actually had some direct interaction with your firefighters, and they are very well trained. They're very dedicated, and I'm preaching to the choir. I know you know that. I think they would like to have I know they would like to have the ability to somewhat alleviate what's on their plate and let the administration of the fire service be placed in the hands of representatives, not unlike yourselves, who take an oath, who get elected and take an oath to fulfill their fiduciary duties, but who are responsive and have more importantly, the time to become acquainted with the fire service and what they need and what their concerns are. So I'll leave that with respect to the impact on the fire department, but I think that the expressions we've had over the past few years are that the fire department would endorse it. And opportunity for questions, and please, I'm going to drag in some of my fellow firefighters here. Sure. You need the mic, or can you speak?
Do
You don't need the mic.
I don't need the mic. Would this not entail the creation of yet another municipal entity, so that rather than consolidating, we would have, if New York State is counting how many entities there are, there would now be one additional taxing entity in the state rather than one fewer?
Absolutely. It absolutely would.
And I think that this has come up at our consolidation meetings, if you will. And what we've kind of come to find is that, I think it was Susan who spoke with the governor's office about it, was that although they hadn't necessarily thought of that scenario, that they were not considering that an additional added government, so we'd still be eligible for the money. But I do think that as a group, if that was a road we wanted to go down, we did decide that we would want a little bit more of a formal response to make sure that that was the case.
I just addressed that, Dan, and we have a formal response. It does not affect incentives, and they don't count it as new government.
I'm not asking, my question has nothing to do with the incentive. I'm asking whether or not, in point of fact, instead of consolidating, we're now proliferating.
Yes.
So there's another child in New York State
But Tom,
to be taken care of.
We had two before, we'll have two again. We had two before, town and village.
Yes.
Now we'll have town and the fire district, so we,
Right.
it's a,
Well,
it's a,
wait, for the time being, we would have the town, the village, and the fire district.
yeah, just like that.
well, yeah.
No, we eliminated one of them.
No, we won't. Says who?
The presumption is, the
It's a false
formation of
assumption.
a fire district would be to consolidate with them.
Logically, they're not related, there's no necessary relationship.
Right. I
That's
understand.
all I'm saying.
You're right.
It would be a fourth government in New Paltz.
Yes.
Rebecca, did you want?
There was public comments on the agenda at the beginning of the meeting where you were supposed to, I have some questions.
Hey, actually, John, we didn't have any public comments, so if you have questions, or if it's a combo question, whatever, grab the mic and feel free. Yep, no? Yeah.
So
And I'm sorry, Don, can you just wait 1 second? I don't know where or speak up, whichever you prefer.
Firstly, thank you to the firefighters in the room. I think anytime I'm in the room with you, I think I'll just say that. Appreciate it, sir. I know that this issue has been discussed for several times over the years. I know that the fire company's in favor of it. I wonder what issue or crisis is occurring right now that compels us to be talking about this again. And I think we just heard about it in recent minutes. This was not, I don't believe, brought on by a crisis in the delivery of fire services. I don't think we're very appreciative and happy with the service we've been receiving. This whole discussion is because of the Government Efficiency Committee and the desire to consolidate, from what I'm gathering from some of the comments recently, later in the meeting. But what we're talking about here is creation of a commission of commissioners to oversee first responders. And in our town, the decision was just recently made to disband a long-standing group of commissioners who oversaw first responders in our police department. So I don't understand how we reconcile this, how it's a bad idea when it's the police, and it's a good idea when it's the fire department. I don't, maybe you can reconcile it, I don't understand it myself. The other question I would ask is, what I was looking for in this presentation was the beef. How does this improve the delivery of fire services? How does this make us safer? Or, from a taxpayer's standpoint, has this saved me money? Or, from a firefighter's standpoint, has this get me more equipment? And I heard a lot of nice things about, a lot of nice things, but we don't have many firefighters in the village. I think that rises to the level of making these changes. And unless you can deliver better services because of this, reduce taxes because of this, or give them more equipment because of this, which might increase taxes, why would you do this? I haven't heard anything along those lines in this presentation. If there was a crisis in fire services right now you're responding to, I'd be all with it, but this seems to have come from the Government Efficiency Committee rather than the community talking about fire services, is my impression from the outside. That's my comment. Questions?
He's right. He's very right. Did
Did Don want an answer? Don?
Maybe I think there was a comment, then we would.
Ellen, do you want an answer?
As I remember it, the question of whether a fire district should be formed or not, the question that was raised before we were really involved in studying consolidation. And at the time, when we were going to do the study, we asked, not we, I mean, it wasn't an official request of the fire department. But what we were saying was, we're going to now be studying consolidation. Would you please be willing to wait for us to examine this question until we had dealt with, until we had completed the consolidation study? Because we didn't want to decide that at the time because it could be part and parcel. So they said they would wait. And now the time, we've finished our work. We've turned it over to the two boards as we were supposed to. So the fire department coming forward with this now is because they were willing to wait until you had done that. So it had nothing to do originally with consolidation at all.
A statement was just made by a town council member that it's assumed that if this was done, the village would go away. That statement was just made.
I did say that, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yes.
You did.
I did.
That's why I'm saying what I'm saying.
Don, the two boards never addressed in 2010 the request of the fire department on a fire district versus the continuation. And part of that reason, I think, in respect of the two boards, was that the two boards were also asking simultaneously that an efficiency committee be formed and a study be done. So it's not either or, as you're implying. Okay. Now it's time the two boards address the request that was made of them. The players are different, but the boards were asked this question in 2010 and did not respond.
My sense was the community did respond at that time, did not have a sense that...
I agree,
No
Don.
response is not a response.
I agree, Don. The public did respond.
And I guess-
2010, I agree. And so, to be fair, I will say that what I did say is my personal opinion and does not reflect the opinion of any other elected board member. I feel that this meeting, this is a Jean Gallucci opinion, is being held, that yes, it is related to furthering discussion on consolidation, dissolution, and village and town, and, you know, that's a personal opinion though, okay? So please don't, and Mike, don't, you know, put it in anybody else's mouth at the table. It's just my personal opinion that it is being re-examined for that reason. But in 2010, when we looked at it, it did not have to do with consolidation or dissolution. Would you agree with that? You were there.
I mean, I actually, so it's not all new players. I was actually there in 2010.
We were there.
And I was at the meeting, and we were there, and one of the things we weren't offered was the formation of a townwide fire protection district and having someone carry legislation.
Correct.
And I'm kind of interested in that. And Don, to answer your question to all the firemen here, you know, to this day, some of them won't speak to me still, and I'm very saddened by that, because apparently this is a fiscal issue. We are creating more government. Whether that's good or bad, I would like to have the community speak on it. I do want to hear more from the community, but I do want to look more into this formation of a townwide fire protection district, and if we can get our legislators to carry it up and the village feels that this would be something better managed by the town, then I'd be happy to look at that too. I think what's interesting, Sally, actually back in 2010, you actually spoke in not in favor of doing a fire district. You know,
I also spoke in favor of a village form of government townwide,
Right.
so
And, you know,
would be implied.
and well, I don't know, I'm not trying to imply either one or either way. I think what's interesting, though, is that, you know, we do now have another option that is available, which was not presented to us back then, and I think that's something we might want to look into. And I think it's also, we're kind of back to Don's, and I apologize, Don, I'm not trying to just respond to you, but it's very interesting, the same things Don said tonight, he said 4 years ago. So it's kind of interesting that he's very salient in his points, which is, you know, you can say they're responding to a single board that's done through elections. Well, for 120, and I apologize, I'm off by a couple of years, 127 years, we've had the village board over the fire department, and they've been doing an incredibly great job with it. They've been keeping the purse strings to it. We have a very active fire department, and it's been running very, very well. If anyone feels it's not running well, it's the same thing as a fire district election. Elect a new village board. You get to elect them. fact, you elect them more frequently than you would elect the fire commissioner. So if you think the fire department is not being run well in the community, it's an easy fix. Re-elect a new village board. It's the same thing. So saying that it's a governance issue is an interesting issue, but it needs to, you can correct the problem.
Except that most of the firefighters can't vote in village elections.
So maybe that makes it something
By a fluke of demographics, where the village is dominated by 18 to 22-year-olds.
So we probably should have a conversation then on the formation maybe of the town. This is new information that was just given to me
There was
now.
a conversation about appealing to college students to join the ranks in 2010 and expanding it that way. And so it would appear to me that based on tonight's discussion, that in the past 4 years, we have not recruited a great deal of college students, which I'm not putting anybody, trust me. No, I'm not saying, okay, I'm not saying the effort wasn't there. I'm saying maybe the interest on the other end. I'm not saying that you guys didn't do it. That's not what I'm saying.
But I'd like to say that I'm not gonna.
I'm next, please. I have my hand up. Thank you. Thank you.
Do you want to go right? Go ahead. No, go right. Okay. Sorry, I didn't see you. That's okay. I can't see everyone over here. To address Don's question, I don't disagree with anything with the Gene Galucci opinion. I don't think I need the mic, but I'm here because I know that this has been a question that has been asked of us before I was on the board, and I had a very long conversation with Steve Greenfield about it, where he talked to me about how once a fire department hits 1,000 calls a year, this is to address the need, the urgency, what the crisis, as you put it, might be. Once a fire department hits 1,000 calls a year, a lot of times they have to go to a combined department of paid and volunteer firefighters, because that is simply the nature of it. We need more people who are going to regularly be on staff. And part of why he felt and said to me that a fire district was a good idea is because you do elect somebody to oversee a budget, and if you don't like how they handle the budget, you can vote them out, essentially. I know that there's different opinions on who is elected, how they're elected, how those elections are go, with the fact that they're in December, not November, with everything else. But I think that concept is a good one, and that was part of why I'm here tonight, is to address those questions and find out more about how it's done.
And they vote oh my God, budget. Please, may I? I've heard everyone plenty of times. Sorry.
Please.
I'd first like to make an announcement. This Saturday, the 10th, the fire company will be hosting a car show and fair at the Ulster County Fairgrounds. Was it 10 to 2? I don't recall. 10 to 4. 10 to 4, okay. And I'm looking forward to being there. But what I really would like to see us do right now, we have a great deal of our fire company here right now, and I really would like to turn the floor away from us, if no one has any objection to them, so that we can hear what their opinions are on this matter. Thank you.
So here,
And also, even if you don't have something to speak, if you could just identify yourself so people at home know.
The last time I was asked by the attorney, back in 2010, I was the chief. Name and address. Dave Weeks, 28 Turbar Loop, New Paltz, New York, back in heart attacks. One of the big things I think that really annoys me is we wanted to hand out a budget. Terry and I stayed up until 3 o'clock in the morning to do a fire district budget, completely different than a village budget. I was lost. When we got all done, there's a substantial savings. Even after we sent our board of commissioners for training, even after we didn't put the money in for our district audit, there was a lot of money savings, and over the years, don't ask why, but every chief that I know that contacted Ulster County Self-Assured, no one would talk to us as chiefs because it went through the village. I really think that once we got numbers, I think I've probably learned why they wouldn't talk to us, but there's a substantial savings by fire district and our own insurance than paying an Ulster County self-insured. Tremendous amount of savings.
Will you share that, Dave?
There was a big money savings in vehicles. Why? Well, maybe we were paying for the fleet in the village. I don't know, but why would we have such a big savings in vehicles? I could see maybe workman's comp, but then again, they never paid up any of our claims anyhow, so I don't know if that's really the case. When our firemen died, they didn't do a thing for us, so. I think money's a big issue. I think having people that care about the fire service, trained in the fire service to make the decisions for me and not a guy worried about flowers on Main Street. I think fighting fires is a serious, dangerous occupation here, and we need people who take this job serious to make the decisions for us. And not to, there's so much going on. If I didn't work for a municipality, you see what goes on, I can understand it. But I also know that when I'm giving up my time for free and I'm going in a burning building, I want to make sure that the commissioners will give me what I need to do the job. And I'm not saying that that hasn't happened in the past, but it'd be nice to have people who are involved and know what it takes. We're far from having the best of anything, and in all honesty, what these guys do, they should have the best of everything. And that's just the way it is. Now, I don't remember, but there's so much involved, and it was back 4 years ago, but I wish I could throw the numbers at you, but I'm thinking it was like 26%. And if you think of that, at a 2% cap, that's 13 years before you can get back to where you were at. So, I mean, I think that's a serious savings, and if I remember correctly, the majority of it, again, was savings in the village, and the people who were doing the job were getting like 1 or 2% decrease in their taxes. But there was a lot to it, and there was a lot of savings, but they didn't allow us to hand out our budget that night because we couldn't hand nothing out.
Do you still have that budget?
I'm sorry?
Do you still have a copy?
I was so aggravated, I threw it out.
Oh, no.
We can do one.
You can, Kevin, you can say.
I'd be interested in seeing where these savings came from. As the one who writes the department budget with or reviews the department budget with the chief, I'd be very curious to see where all the savings was coming from. So if you could reconstruct any of that, that'd be very useful.
It's not easy to construct a budget, but I think we can address it like we did. Did you get something back there?
Bob Craig aside, Julie Evans and Bolts. I'd like to ask the people at the front desk, how many people know how many fire engines we have? Raise your hand, please. How many?
I could probably count them.
How many fire engines do we have?
No, we have one. Is it 6? Probably, I think I'm wrong.
7.
How many know? The commissioners would know. Okay, we have 7.
7.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
I also don't know how many DPW trucks we have. Just throw that out there too.
That's part of your job, really.
No, it's my job to be able to find out the information, not to have it memorized.
Just for the record, Jean Galucci was right. She was on the village board, so yes, she did know.
So you're batting 500 in the Hall of Fame.
Chris knows how many Department of Public Works vehicles we have. I don't know how many we
I just
have.
have a question. Tell me if my presumption's right. As far as equipment goes with the Board of Commissioners, you would have a persons that are dedicated just do the research for buying, getting the correct equipment versus a full board that's looking into a few personnel from that board looking into that particular thing and the whole budget.
The way it typically goes is a board's going to contemplate buying a piece of apparatus in 2017. They would do some preliminary work, make certain they're going to do what they needed, and in probably 2014, start with forming a truck committee, probably 2 commissioners, because you wouldn't want 3 because that's a quorum. 2 commissioners, the current chief, the past chief, or past chiefs, and every firehouse has somebody who's really good with engines and, knows this stuff. That's typically who's on the truck committee, and they would go out, they would go to the shows, they would review the literature, and they'd come back with a recommendation.
So right to the point, and that may answer a question for you, what you think is better. That's a plus. You have a person who's trained in the fire service, looking at vehicles and know what they're looking at, versus possibly people from a board that go in, when the person comes on and goes, would you want a tier 3 or tier 4 engine? And they think it has to do with how high it is. We run into that a lot with the DPW. People who pass highway superintendents who spec trucks shouldn't spec trucks. They should have left it up to a professional. I'm stuck with 2 trucks that are very big, that don't carry any weight. I'm stuck with $500,000 worth of trucks that can't get out of their own way because the wrong engines were put in. So it's all that is done is cost the town money to try and get us back up to where we should be. We finally got something, and I don't want to go off on a tangent, finally did something new, after so many years, and they're all wrong. Now, if you had a real professional looking at it, someone that's only job was to research, talk to other fire departments, see what's going on. Do we need a $1 million special cab truck, or can you do the same job with something that's less to save some money to the fiscal? But that's a plus, that's a savings.
Now, I just have to make one comment, because I'm agnostic on the fire district. It's a government restructuring. It's a technocratic discussion. And I don't think there's a firefighter here would ever say that I've done the department wrong in my 2 terms as mayor. I've worked with a lot of chiefs. And it doesn't help the argument for a fire district to have folks getting up and saying that, the village board doesn't know what they're doing, so we need a fire commissioner. You could use the same argument to say, well, then we should just, not have the village board run the Department of Public Works because we don't know how to plow a street. We should have the town board have anything to do with the police department and have only trained police officers deal with that. It's the exact same argument. Now, it's fire districts, I'm not opposed or in favor of it yet because I don't know all the data. What I do know is that it's harmful to those who want a fire district to insult the people who are currently holding the position based on the fact that we don't have the number of trucks memorized. Because it's going to hurt your case. Because it's going to cause friction where there doesn't need to be any. Because just like the DPW, just like the police department, the fire department is an integral kind of, cog in the machine of how we provide services to the whole community. And elected representatives, look, our only requirement for the job, and this holds true to the fire commissioners were there to be created, was the ability to get 1 more vote than somebody else. That's the only requirement for the job. So what you need to do is you need to be able to learn how the government functions, not only the fire department, but all the other departments, enough that you can have intelligent conversations about how to move forward with the leadership. So when there's a problem with the fire department, I get it from the chief or from Rebecca, who's our liaison. And there's ways that we go about this where we educate each other on what our needs are. So just moving forward, I'd like just to put that out there because it's been said a couple times by guys I like and respect. But it's our job to learn, to know as much as we need to know to get the job done. It's the fire department leadership's job, just like it is the DPW leadership's job, to educate and work with us and help us. And if the fire district is the right way to go for that, we got to be on the same team and work towards that, kind of all facing the same direction. That's all I wanted to say.
To your point, and I don't think anybody intended to denigrate either board or any board.
I don't think that was the intent.
If I did that, I apologize.
No, I don't think it was the intent.
Well, if I did it, and hopefully I'm always give you respect too. But
it is.
The one point you made that I think needs to be expounded upon is, and I'm going to challenge you not with a question, but there's only one non-renewable resource in the world.
Time.
Exactly. And your DPW gets paid. Your police department gets paid.
Yeah.
All right? Your fire department doesn't get paid. Okay, those individuals are dedicating their time and their livelihoods, things that they could be doing, to provide a service to this community. So it's not the same as...
And fewer and fewer of them every year.
It's not the same as the police department with the commissioners. Okay, it's a different situation. There's not the paycheck every 2 weeks.
Sure.
So what the fire department is telling you, the fire company is telling you, is that they have looked at the fire district model and they like it, and they like the fact that it's going to take a lot of the responsibility that their membership has now and put it someplace, put it in a governmental entity that will take care of them, that will have an understanding, and will have solely the obligation to make certain that they're provided with all of the equipment that they need and the resources they need.
And that was the most persuasive argument I heard all night, was because I didn't realize the degree to which a fire district would relieve the volunteers of administrative duties. So thank you for making that argument. Yeah.
Just to segue on what Karen was saying, Kevin McGuire, current chief of the fire department. I was Dave's assistant forever and ever when Dave was chief. Point of interest, I would guesstimate that I spend probably 20 to 25 hours a week doing fire department business. That would be, and I think that's a legitimate number. I called Rebecca today, and we have a 3:30 meeting today, and I called Rebecca, I texted her actually this morning, I told her I wasn't going to make it. I just had things at home I had to do. I spent most of the day yesterday with fire department business, and now today too. And that's pretty much my week, on top of my 48-hour-a-week job and my wife and family. 20, 25 hours every week is to the fire department. And most of that is administrative, meetings, paperwork, phone calls, things like that. So just to put that out there to you guys.
Things that would be relieved by a board of fire commissioners, or reduced. Reduced.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to be doing the calls.
Right.
And we are busy. Last year was probably one of the slowest years we had in the past 10 years. And we did 636 calls last year. That was probably the slowest year I remember since I've been around the fire department. But we have crested 1,000 calls a year already. And typically we're 800 to 900. That's typically where we are. So in reference to what Ariana was saying, that 1,000 per year number, we're right below that. And that's pretty much traditionally where we are. And we're on pace to do probably 800 or 900 this year. Because we're already up to 250 for the year. So, thank you.
No. I'm just, if anyone else from the fire department would like to speak, and also, even if you don't, if you could just, introduce yourself, just because we've got the counter here, and I'd really like people in the community to see your faces and know your name.
Joe Drain, I live at 15 Moore Drive. Just to piggyback on a couple things that the mayor was talking about. As a taxpayer in the town of New Paltz, I think on my mortgage signing, I volunteered. I transferred in. I was a transferred active member from another department before my mortgage was signed. That's how dedicated to the fire service these guys are. They're all like that. With that said, as a taxpayer, I personally don't care that there's a special taxing entity that's going to only deal with the fire department. I don't have a problem with that. And as a fireman, I'd appreciate that just for the sheer fact that that's all they worry about.
Right.
And for the mayor, or for the town board, or for the village board, that's one less thing they have to worry about. Those guys, or those women, and those men, that's all they're going to worry about. They're going to collect those taxes. They're going to go ahead and make sure that the money's used appropriately. We're not about to run off and just spend millions of dollars. We're all taxpayers. The bulk of the company is taxpayers. We can't change the village because we don't live in the village.
Right.
I'm not about to sell my house and move to the village.
It's a lovely place.
I've got enough trouble now trying to keep the $2 in my pocket and turn it into $5.
Right.
I haven't been home half hour today. That's it. I got home and came here because this is how important this is. This is for the entire community. We're doing what we can do. We're doing it for nothing because we wanted to. But you can only have this as Boy Scouts for so long. We're eventually going to just say, enough's enough. I stepped down as an officer this year just because I've put so much on the back burner at home. You're going to get that. Bringing college kids in, that's fine. I get it for 2 years, maybe 3 years. Last year I brought in six kids. We brought in. Out of the 6 that came in, 2 of them stayed.
Is that a good number, retention rate?
That's not a good.
I don't know.
Because when I started in the fire service at 18, you'd have 12 or 15 people a month that would be coming up maybe for a vote. You have people just begging to get in the fire service. It doesn't happen anymore.
Locally, or is that a broader regional or statewide program?
It's just across the board. Let's be honest. People are coming home, and all they're concerned about is getting Timmy to the soccer game. And are we going to have Chinese food or pizza tonight? Because we got to go.
Right.
They're not volunteering. So your numbers are dwindling. You're going to run into that. You're eventually going to have a paid fire department if you're not careful with this. We want to do this. We want to help our community, and we're taxpayers, and we're trying to help our community. This is what we do. We're just asking you guys to do the right thing for us. We're not saying you're not doing a good job. We're just saying, hey, if you had a group of people that that's all they're worried about, one less thing on your plate, and they can make sure this is getting addressed for the community. That's it. Thank you.
Could I ask the firefighters a question, or anyone can answer, the chief or whoever? The one big downside that I've learned about a fire district is that wrinkle that bonding goes up for public referendum like a school district. And I believe Highland, maybe 10 years ago, needed a new truck and the voters voted it down. Whereas, was it Gardner? Yeah. So I mean, that's a big change, a big, potentially big risk. Whereas, in the village now, we just put the new truck in the budget and it's just fine. So is this a real fear? Is this something we should be concerned about in terms of getting the equipment?
I don't really deal myself. That's why I'm chief.
Should I be concerned about that aspect of this? Of a fire district?
I'm the chief and I'm not concerned about it. Because I think if we need a new pumper, rescue truck, ladder truck, if we put that out there to the public and legitimately sell it to them, then we'll get it. And if we don't, then we won't. If we're asking for something unreasonable, then obviously we're not going to get it from the public. But if we're asking for something that is a reasonable piece of equipment that is needed to replace a piece that is costing more money to maintain, then we'll get it. So I think that's so am I afraid of having to go to a public referendum for a piece of equipment? No, not at all.
Good. Thanks, Chief.
I have a question for Jason, and this isn't a hostile question, but in the last several years, after the village has prepared the budget for the fire district, or for the fire department, how has the town board reacted? Has there been any problem on the division between what the town pays and the village pays?
There really hasn't been any friction on that. No.
Okay, good.
Because what happens, for those who don't watch the budget, is the chief writes the budget and we go over it and it gets folded into the overall village budget.
Yeah.
The village board goes through it, and what we generally do is we just compare last year's spending to what we spent last year, and if we need more, we add more. If we don't need something, we take it out. It's really not rocket science. And then, right, and it's been surprisingly frictionless, because what happens then is it just goes through the regular village budget process, and the town basically looks at it and has not had a complaint that's come to me in the 7 years I've been mayor.
But we have not all signed a contract ever on time.
Well, the contracts are different. We're just talking about the budget numbers. There's been really no disagreement between the town and the village.
Carol, right, but the split now, the split is very close to 50-50, very close.
Yeah.
It can be 48-52. It's so close to 50-50 that there is very
Right.
little agitation.
And it's been that way since at least
to fund the fire department.
03, I think.
I think we're 53% now.
Which isn't usually high. It's usually 49, 51, one way or the other.
There's no contention.
There hasn't been, no. It's been, yeah.
Yeah.
Not for tonight, but I have two questions. We talked about the future, we talked about what we currently do, but none of us have talked about the model of transition of finances should we go to a fire district. I mean, obviously, the village has bonds on fire equipment and things. Is there a model, Terry, or Bill, does the fire department have an accountant the model of transition and how all of that indebtedness gets transferred? Does the fire district pay the village back and incur its own indebtedness? I mean, do you understand what I'm asking? Okay.
The answer to the above is yes. It really depends upon, if you have unencumbered apparatus, typically that gets transferred to the fire district. If it's encumbered apparatus, encumbered by a bond and secured, and security interest and whatnot, then there has to be a mechanism by which to pay that off. And if it's I would say inconsequential amount, which use your own definition, then the fire district could pay the village and the village would pay it off. If it's on 10 years, then you would have an arrangement whereby there would be an annual payment to the village.
Are there various models?
It all depends. I've got situations where the fire company owns the apparatus, and when you do something like this, they'll transfer the apparatus to the fire district. So, and some of that's covered. You really have to sit down with the assets that are in play, meaning the assets that would be transferred, and somewhat on a case-by-case basis. It's not really complicated, but you don't want to get into situations where you're transferring the ownership of a piece of apparatus that has security interest in it. I mean, there's ways to do it, but it's not overly cumbersome. It just depends on the specific asset and how it's structured. Same thing with respect to if there were reserve funds. Okay, if you've been putting away, $5,000, $10,000 a year for the last 10 years for fire protection, and half of that was the town's money for that capital reserve, then those assets should be transferred to the district or offset the payoff indebtedness. So you really have to kind of get the ledgers out, get the asset listing out, and figure out how to do it. But there's a process you go through, but it's unique in every situation.
And my second question is one that I believe particularly the town board and somewhat indirectly village board have we thought, or would we even wish to think about an emergency services special district which would include the rescue squad and the fire into one district with a board of commissioners? Because I think that emergency services in general.
Can we not, that's a much bigger conversation.
I hope that's not for tonight.
And that's not,
Sally prefaced her questions by doing two questions.
but it's a very valid question, and
Let's not spend time answering them.
let's not turn this into a
It's just
conversation.
something to think about, especially those people who have such concerns about the rescue squad.
I'd like to take that back to the town board.
I mean, it is a very valid question, and I think that's a great question, and I think what we best serve that question, and I don't know where your anger is coming from, Sally, so I apologize if I angered you, but I would like to get the leadership of the fire department together with the leadership of the rescue squad, because it's actually there's some state law in there. There's actually an ambulance protection district that you can create. One of the things that could, real quickly, is there's revenue in a rescue squad, which fire department can't do, just because of the sheer
Wasn't one
fact.
for-profit and one's not for-profit?
Not really. They can bill. To make it simple, rescue squads can bill where fire departments cannot bill. So I think it's a great conversation. I would like to have the leadership of our fire department and the leadership of our rescue squad to have. And then moving forward, there's also another, and then there's another piece too. And Kevin could probably speak smarter to this than I could. You could then start rolling, and Sally, this would interest you. You could then roll rescue squad members potentially into LoSAP, which they don't get. And now they could actually start getting some benefits from, the hundreds of hours they put in also. So it's a very worthy conversation, but I don't know if it's part of this conversation, and it may take their attorney, and I'd like to hear Kevin and,
In regards to billing,
Open it up
fire
if you don't want to have the
departments
conversation.
can't bill. Fire districts cannot bill.
Right.
So if the fire department ran an ambulance service, then we could certainly bill.
That's what I mean. So I think there's
Districts cannot bill.
right. I think there's a bigger conversation to have there
The
then.
fire district cannot?
Cannot bill.
That's why you have an ambulance protection district, which I'd like to have a conversation.
Can I make a correction, Jeff?
Actually, a fire department can't bill either, but a village can, and a city can. So it's, we're slicing hairs.
Yeah.
So just trying to bring this back here for a moment. We've heard a lot today. A lot of this, I was not on the board when we originally did this. A lot of us weren't. So a lot of this is very new. Although I have talked to Steve Greenfield a bit about it as well prior to coming here. So what we have interesting points by the fire department, a lot of which I want to continue to consider and continue the dialogue. What do we want to do from here as a board? What is our next step here in this conversation at this point? And does anyone actually have an idea of what that is?
Well, I think Terry is a good piece for that. So, I mean, we learned some newer things here, definitely. The town-wide piece is something that I didn't even know of, a formation of a town-wide, and that would require active legislation.
Do we want to
And then,
establish a committee at this point to continue this conversation? And I'm not trying to, break this out more, but I'm saying, I'm just trying to figure out what we're doing here, because we already had this discussion once in 2010.
Are you volunteering?
We had this conversation once in 2010, and nothing was acted on, so I'm just trying to find a way where we can, continue this conversation. I'm not necessarily volunteering myself, I'm just trying to get this conversation moving.
How about you and Rebecca, since she's already the fire department liaison?
I think we should start working on it. I'd be fine if you want to, and I know
yes, Dan, I will work.
No, small committee. Small committee.
You don't want more than 2 people on each for each board.
I mean,
If you want, we can.
I would love to.
I will.
Well, I was just thinking, I don't think it's necessarily going to have very much, and I hate to ask and volunteer, Eugene, but you have some knowledge from the past.
The thing is, I don't have any time.
I know.
I can do it.
I will do it, Dan. I will do it along with you, Dan.
Okay.
There we go. We have a committee of two members from each board.
Unless you want to meet on Saturdays, because I am free on weekends.
All right, so we've established a committee to continue this conversation.
Can I make a suggestion or ask a question? I think the 2 boards should, one, talk together and determine whether a fire protection district is even on the table.
Why don't we leave it up to the committee that we're setting up?
And can we involve someone from the fire department?
You'd have to.
Maybe too?
Oh, yeah,
That's
yeah.
very critical
Okay.
here as well.
Oh, absolutely.
In my opinion, the only purpose for this particular committee that we're establishing would be simply to put a proposal between both boards.
Okay.
And no discussion about whether or not we should, but actually putting a proposal together for both boards to act on.
I'll second your motion.
Would that be an agreement with?
Chief? Does that sound good to you?
Does that
Yeah.
sound like a reasonable proposal?
Two town board members and 2 village board members as a committee of this group, working with the fire department to put together a proposal to bring back to the full 10 politicians to see where we go forward.
Absolutely.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pardon me?
Let me know when the next meeting is.
Yeah.
Rebecca, you're saying 2 town, 2 village, and 2 fire.
And definitely the chief and anyone else who would like to, because they
Probably the president.
Absolutely, yes.
Probably, yeah.
Be the chief and the president.
Bill, is that all right with you?
Yeah.
Recruiting? All right, so let's, from the village side, let's say that I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
I did make a motion.
Oh, you did? Okay.
I seconded.
All right, moved and seconded. Great. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
So for the
Town standpoint, I'd like to make this same motion.
second,
All those in favor?
aye.
Gene?
Gene doesn't know whether she wants to vote aye or not.
Technically, you need to vote.
You need to vote to break the tie, Gene.
If you vote it down, it does fail.
That does fit.
I'm just, this is kind of like really important, and the supervisor herself is not present, so I feel it's like critically important.
Well, that was her choice.
I understand that, Jason, but I feel that it's really important that you review the DVD and know what direction we're going in.
Understand that, but we have a motion on the floor Do you have to register a vote? Because there's 3 of us, a yes or a no does pass or fail.
And so,
But all we're doing is coming up with something for the boards to look at, right?
and get more
We're not-
information.
Yeah, I don't see
Right,
CCC
you're not
opposed to this, whether she's
suggesting
here or
that
not.
you're going to examine all 3 options. You're suggesting that you're going to determine an option and put it in front of the boards.
No, I think.
not whatsoever.
That's what Anna said.
Okay, explain to me what
The
it
impression
is.
that I'm under, and as a committee member, what I plan on doing is looking at what all the options are and bringing more information. to the
Okay, so
board
that's
on
what you're
how
going to
we
do for
would
the
move
village.
forward.
So since Dan made his motion, he can explain to me what his intent is.
Is that?
I assumed was the intent, and unless
Okay,
Jeff
so
had a
you're
different
gonna,
understanding.
okay, so you're gonna
It's my
investigate
intent.
all 3 options and bring all 3 options
Pros and cons
back
of
to
each.
both boards.
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll be also including Bill and Kevin, who
Right.
spent
No, I
probably
understand.
hundreds of hours with, Mr. Hannigan there, and so they have a
So,
higher education than we do.
I'm an aye, Katie. And
Thank you.
Susan really has to see.
Thank you. Thank you, Gene. Gene, thank
Is
you.
there anything else?
The village we have one other comment?
Yeah, my name is Joe Miller, and I've been sitting here listening to this, and this is a perfect, what just went on here at this table is a perfect example of why we need fire district. When my colleagues go inside a burning building, thank you. When my colleagues go inside a burning building, it's a very hostile to life environment. We go inside either to find victims, or we go inside to find the source of fire. And actually, we do both at the same time. That requires teamwork of trained, dedicated individuals who are looking for, they're looking for the welfare of the people in the building, and also trying to protect their belongings and their place of business or their home. We are very dependent on each other. And when it comes to the administrative side of it, we have to rely on people whose only interest is in giving us the equipment and the environment that will allow us to accomplish our job. They can't be distracted by deciding what flowers to put on Main Street. They can't be distracted by deciding what problems with the sewer plant are, or what the problems with DPW are. Their only concern, as far as we are concerned, because it's our welfare that's in the balance, is that they are trained to deal with the administrative aspect of volunteer fire service. We are volunteers, we're not paid, we're dedicated. Please give us the opportunity to be administered by people who are also trained in that way and not distracted by other issues that have to be dealt with. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
I agree.
Well, before we wrap up then,
Somebody else has something to say.
oh, do we? So I apologize.
Louis Ostrowski, town resident, firefighter. Well, I'm gonna just piggyback on what Joe just basically said, 'cause that's exactly what I was gonna say. If you want an example of dedication, I'm gonna give you a real great example. About 3 years ago, I was involved in a bad accident during my EVOC class. And you want to talk about dedicated, and Kevin can attest this, I linked my way into a truck just to finish the training. That's how dedicated I am to this department, to this town, to this community. To hear the board bicker about forming just a committee to bring back options to the both boards makes me sick.
Anyone else?
I'll move to adjourn. Oh, wait.
Sally, you guys can't. The town can.
Would you all, actually,
5 seconds.
Sally, could you please just withdraw that quickly?
This?
No, withdraw your motion to adjourn.
Oh, sure.
Excuse me, Rebecca, and Katie, we need a single motion, which is what?
To authorize the bills and claims.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Katie, can you do me a favor? Can you repeat back what you described in terms of my proposal for a committee?
Pardon me, let me just jump back to. My understanding, what I have written down is that you are proposing a committee to bring back information to the joint boards. It would be you and Ariana who would be representing the village. It would be Dan and Jeff who would be representing the town, inviting Kevin and Bill to be the representatives from the fire company. And that you would be bringing back information to the joint boards on the potential of fire districts.
Yes.
You said pros and cons.
No, I did not say pros and cons.
Pros and cons later on.
Yes.
Of each of three.
No, not at all. My proposal was for the committee to bring back to both boards a proposal to establish the fire district, and specifically the joint fire district.
And that, I seconded that.
Yes. So I just want that to be clear that that was the proposal. It wasn't any more discussion. It wasn't looking at a number of different options. It was one proposal for one outcome.
But that wasn't your proposal, Dan, was it?
No, my proposal.
That's all I needed to know.
Okay.
All right, I'll move to adjourn on behalf of the village.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll move for the same for the town.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Very good.
Thank you all for coming out.
For coming.
Wait, the signature, please, signature.